Hello, everyone, and welcome to tonight's session of Unplugged with Ross. My name is Roslyn Miner. Tonight's topic is You Are the Asset, personal investment that pays off. Really excited about this topic because we often show up for others, but we hardly show up for ourselves. Tonight, I'm joined by my HR colleague and friend, Ayoti Bukachitande. She is a seasoned people and culture leader with cross-industry experience spanning from energy, manufacturing, FMCG, banking, and advertising. She's currently the People and Culture Director at Financing Alliance for Health. Tonight, she is joining us as we have this discussion about, investing in ourselves and the need to invest in ourselves. She is known for building enabling environments, leading transformation and mentoring talent. She's a certified John Maxwell team member. She is ICF certified organization effectiveness coach. She's a certified Hogan assessor and predictive index analyst. She's also a board advisor at Forza Trust. And last year, she was named amongst top 25 change makers in the people and culture space by Business Monthly East Africa. So we are having a conversation with someone who's had the depth of wealth when it comes to people and culture. And who better to have this conversation tonight other than Ayoti? Ayoti, karibu sana.
Asante sana. Thank you so much, Roslyn. I really appreciate us taking this hour to have this conversation. I'm very excited and thrilled to be here.
Happy to have you here, honored to have you here. And now let's just, as is our custom, I'll start with a few statistics based on our topic. When it comes to personal investment, 69% of coached employees report higher job satisfaction and are less likely to leave their roles. Training alone improves productivity by about 22%, but training combined with coaching can increase productivity by up to 88%. When it comes to energy and sustainable performance, we see that coaching and leadership development interventions have been shown to reduce stress levels by up to 50% in executives. And when we look at coaching in external perspective, 70% of coached professionals report better work performance and productivity, and teams led by coached managers can see productivity increase of over 50%.
Yeah.
So as you can see, when it comes to the job environment, we can see the importance of coaching. We can see the importance of having the right leaders, how to manage our energy, and how to actually have very high performance. Do you have initial thoughts on this, Ayoti?
Yeah, the reality is coaching is really a way of unlocking one's potential and unlocking one's mind. And often at times that we feel, especially when you're moving up the career ladder, you keep giving, but you do not receive anything in return. And they keep saying it's lonely at the top. And this is a very relevant conversation given where we are in terms of the IWD. And the theme for this year was about give to gain.
Yeah.
And it's been very reflective for me in the last couple of days, asking myself, I have been giving, and do I give to gain? The reality is we give to give. And we do not expect to gain at that point because you feel like it's kind of a responsibility when you go up the career ladder to keep empowering and to keep unlocking. But then you have to keep on refreshed. You cannot keep giving from an empty vessel. So my perspective on that is we have to keep on refreshing ourselves, and coaching is one fantastic way of doing it, and mentorship is another. Yes.
Brilliant. Now, based on that, let's start on the coaching and external perspective. Our opening question being, many capable professionals pride themselves on figuring things out on their own. I'm probably guilty on that. Why can external perspective through coaching or mentorship still be so valuable?
Wow. Okay. The reality is, most high performance and not of overachievers cannot see themselves as capable and they are natural problem solvers, right? And the reality is, um, more often than not, they got there through their charting their own paths and they're independent in terms of how they have done things. They have led teams. They have been very successful in that space. Now, the reality of this matter is there's an element about self-awareness that one has to know how important it is as a competence because you need to be aware and you need to look in the mirror and say, outside in, when I look in the mirror, I see exactly who I am. I cannot kid myself. And so, what coaching does, it puts a mirror in front of you, and you're able to, the conversations that follow really are really thought provoking. The kind of conversations that are, I never looked at it from that perspective. I never thought of it that way. And so, what it helps you to do, it helps you to actually reposition how you lead. You look at how you communicate effectively, how you make decisions that are sound, that are powerful. And so, at the end of it all, it allows this person who is an overachiever or a high achiever to just pause because they are speaking. There's another voice they're listening to who's basically um, sometimes even questioning the way they thought the things used to should be working. And it allows them to reflect and further refine their approach. And so it makes you become better and better. And they say iron sharpens iron. And so when they keep refining their approach, what happens is the small habits which they could have overlooked and could be limiting in terms of the patterns they create, they are mitigated. Sorry about that, Rosalind. They're mitigated early enough. And so what it does, it just allows you to pause. And so that you don't start going down a slippery slope because it's a reality and that can happen. And in many cases, you'll find that the difference between a good professional and an exceptional one is their willingness to seek perspective beyond what they believe they know. That is the difference. It's a very thin line between a good professional and an exceptional one. And that is where even feedback starts to come in, your ability to receive, your ability to just introspect and be able to change course. Because there's one constant thing in life, and that is change. And so we have to keep on growing, we have to keep on refreshing ourselves. Yeah.
I like the fact that you spoke of coaching bringing through thought provoking questions, questions
Mm.
that will have you introspecting, questions
Yeah.
that will have you seeking a different perspective to
Mhm.
fine tune the journey that you have mapped out to yourself. So, which
Mhm.
now takes me to the next question. What are some of the blind spots that tend to persist even amongst experienced professionals?
It- The reality is, your greatest strength can become your greatest blind spot. And that's why perspective matters, right? And so when you have an overplayed strength, it can be at your detriment. And that is where we actually have to look at specific things like, for example, I'm a choleric as an individual. So I'm very decisive. I move with speed. I know what I want. I know the kind of standards that I create for myself. But guess how it works against me? It makes me quite impatient. When you're not moving at my pace, I feel like, you know what? And so it starts to work even against my delegation as a leader. And so what happens is you end up either you micromanage a process or you will not be able to effectively empower and unlock somebody because you're moving at speed and they cannot catch on. And so the reality is this becomes, and it's actually going to segue into a very interesting conversation around energy,
Yeah.
right? And another blind spot is around how then do we manage your energy? And if you are a high achiever, how do you manage that energy? The reality is you push yourself and you push yourself because you are trying to achieve so much more. And what happens is it can lead to burnout. Now, one last one that I'm just going to mention here is the reality. Just before I move to the last point, a lot of times when you are working over a strenuous period of time, long hours, you cannot tell until the fatigue starts checking in, and the kind of decisions you're making, they're not as sound as you'd have made if you are more refreshed, if you took time to pause, step back, and actually come back. Now, one last one is the element of the relational blind spot. And the relational blind spot for me is a big one as an individual, because I'm a big believer of the power of social capital. And so for this, if you are one individual who's pushing and you are um, working in a way that the kind of speed that you're taking, you're not carrying people along, then you can be seen to be unapproachable if you are not aware. And that's why self-awareness is a very critical element for any leader. You need to be inviting. You need to be able to introspect, and ask yourself, what is this, especially when you're working under pressure? How do you show up when you're working under pressure? And so, are you overly demanding just because you can do stretched hours? Are you also asking the same from your team? And so it starts to strain those relationships. And so you need to create enough space for others to come in and contribute. Because if you're moving at that pace and the people are not fast enough like you are, then you actually do not give them latitude to actually to contribute. And so then you miss out on the complementarity of thinking, the divergent of the different views that come in, and the inclusivity that actually makes it a better space. And so I would say those are some of the areas I would say are just quick touch points at this point to be aware of in terms of a blind spot. Yeah. Mhm.
You've put it so nicely and so wholesomely that as leaders, what you deem to be your strength can also be your absolute weakness. And you've broken it down so nicely in terms of approachability, being inviting, allowing space for divergent thoughts and opinions, and that inclusivity, which in a way tells us, when you're doing your self-awareness, all the tasks to do with self-awareness, if you are even to do a SWOT analysis, and you mentioned about the relation of blind spot, how that plays out, how you show up not only for yourself but for others. I think the need to ensure that you are carrying people along, they are learning along with you. And yes, sometimes it's frustrating if people cannot keep up with you. But I think that awareness allows us to learn a thing or two with a specific edge that people will actually go, aha, I see why she does it the way she does, and I would like to emulate her. Now, how can someone recognize that they would benefit from coaching or guidance, even if nothing is going wrong? Because I think oftentimes someone might have a misconception of, why do I need coaching? I think everything is going okay with me. So why is something wrong with my performance? Is something wrong with how I do my relationships? How can we get the negative perspective or bias against coaching and mentoring and see it as a key enabler to growth and success?
I like that last word. In fact, I was just like, coaching is an enabler. And you got it out of my mind. It's like, oh, we are in the spirit together, Rosalind. The reality is, let me just take a step back and put some context in this conversation. Earlier on in my career, where as a HR professional, when I was a business partner, I had one boss who said to me that, who says you have to build development plans because of people's areas of opportunity? How about, and that time we were trying to create the pulling factor to help colleagues while they're doing their performance conversations to also have development conversations. And so we changed tact and we said, we are going to build development plans leveraging on strengths. And so this is where I want to take this from. Now, the reality is we need to shift our mindset completely, because coaching is not a repair mechanism at all. It's a growth accelerator, right? And when I say a growth accelerator, When you get the right coach and you work together and you understand how the relationship is in tune, you accelerate. You can only fly. Now, it's not about fixing what's broken, not at all. In certain cases, yes, you will need coaching to address some gaps that you have, but not always the case. Actually, the best time to get a coach is to sharpen what is working. Because sometimes we plateau. And now here I'm talking to high performers here. When high performers, the assets in the organization, not those who sit on the top right hand corner,
Yeah.
the one with sustained contribution is always on the peak. You've got very high potential. You cannot know what you don't know until you speak to somebody else. And I'm going to go back to the word that iron sharpens iron. And so you need to keep sharpening every day. And I keep saying you cannot pour what you don't have. And so the reality with this conversation is that when you when you reflect at the time when things are actually going well, that is the time. It's really the sweet spot to actually get coaching a different perspective. Because it actually provokes your mind to see things that are very different. Sometimes when you go into coaching, when things are not working, you go from a point of panic and you're all over the place and you really want it to work so badly, it sort of becomes like a church. So the best time, and some of the signals that you can actually know that this is the time for me to go for coaching is when you're feeling consistently busy, but you don't feel that what you're doing is meaningful, the work you're doing has no purpose. When you start saying, I'm looking for impact, I want to do something, I can't feel that self actualization. That's an opportunity to consider coaching. Another time is when you start noticing that you've plateaued. You start feeling that, oh my goodness, despite my effort, despite whatever I'm putting in, I do not feel that level of internal. I don't feel that level of, in the morning
So,
when I wake up, I have to push myself out of bed. But yet you're a performer. You need to ask yourself, I probably need to sharpen myself a little bit more. And I'll just mention one last one. When you're preparing to move to the next level, when you're preparing to fly, when you're preparing to accelerate in your career, that is also another way to also consider coaching, because what it does is you partner with a coach to really help you to create a structured space for your thinking. That is another space you can actually consider coaching. Yeah.
yeah, you've said very many important things. If there's one of the key takeaways I would take, something your boss said, and it's actually something my boss
Yeah.
told me. You can only improve opportunity areas to a certain extent. But when it comes to places that someone is really good at, you can actually grow exponentially. And therefore, when you're talking about pivoting, when someone is thinking about changing direction, the importance of having a conversation with a coach not only opens your mind to bigger possibilities, but also challenges you in the sense, okay, you may feel that you've plateaued in this level, but
Mm,
what other angle can you take? Because yes, most of the time when you've plateaued, you lack that engagement. So
yeah.
how else can you seek engagement? How else can you seek that clarity of thought and the foundation that you want to lay and still keep, that pizzazz going on in your life?
Mm,
As we close out this section about coaching in external perspective, for
mhm.
someone new to the idea, what should they look for in a coach or mentor to ensure the experience is genuinely developmental? And maybe you can highlight, people might think a coach and a mentor are the same. Those are two different people, the,
Absolutely.
two different personas. So how can someone look for a coach or a mentor to ensure the experience is genuinely developmental?
Okay. So first let's appreciate who a coach is. A coach is that person who will partner with you to unlock your potential. A coach will not tell you what to do. A coach will just basically just ask thought-provoking questions to help you navigate your path. And usually a coach doesn't have to even be in your line of work. Like they could be absolutely from a totally different background, but because they are trained and they're certified, so just make sure they're trained and certified by International Coach Federation, because then they are specific competencies that they show up with, and in terms of how they journey together in this conversation. That's what a coach does. Now, what a mentor does, a mentor is that individual who many a times have walked your journey. Many a times they have been through a path you've been through. Technically speaking, in certain cases, you have quite a bit of similarities. You might say, okay, this person has worked in this space and I would like to work in that space. So I would like to understand what sort of nuances around that space. They actually understand the pitfalls, they know how to navigate. And so then that becomes a mentor. And you can have different relationships with different people. You can have a mentor, you can have a coach, you can have a sponsor, you can have, a guide, like somebody who teaches you. So there are many kind of relationships, as you would notice. I really, really value the power of having that social network around you that actually you can leverage on. So then what would you be looking for in this sort of relationship? The first and most important thing is psychological safety. You need to be comfortable to have a conversation with this individual, whether it's a coach or whether it is a mentor. This is not your friend. And I say this with a lot of caution because sometimes when the lines are blurred, then you cease to actually keep it within the reins, right? And so creating psychological safety does not mean that this person is your buddy. So, what it means is you just need to be able to speak honestly about your challenges, ambitions, and anything that you need around judgment, that you need sound judgment, you need to be able to open up to this individual. And that is why many a times you will find, and not to say that a line manager and an employee, the relationship is not as fluid, but it is not advised for your line manager to be your coach, right? It's important to work with somebody else who's not managing you on a day-to-day basis. Because again, subjectivity can check in, and then when you open freely, then you might wonder, how will this be used against me when it comes to performance reviews and things like that? So, not encouraged. The other thing is also to look at, is this person able to challenge you constructively? Meaning, what sort of conversation can I have with this individual? Like when you're talking about challenging you constructively, is can they go deeper and help you to think and provide different perspectives? And this is really coming in handy, especially when you're looking at a mentor, because the mentor, when you're looking at the different perspectives, a coach can also do the same. But if you're looking at a specific area, maybe something work related and things like that, and you're looking at a mentor who's probably walked along that journey, you can actually look at that as a consideration. Now, the final thing I'll talk about is you must be aligned in terms of the relationship, your intent and their intent, and it has to be very clear. So you have to be aligned with this individual as you get into this relationship because it is a journey. It is a marathon that you go step by step. It takes time. And so it is a relationship you're building over, it could be a couple of weeks, it could be a couple of months, even just depending on what you're trying to address. And the relationship should be focused on growth and not dependency. So one of the things that you need to really guard against when you are getting into this relationship is to be able to build your own clarity and confidence about why you're going into this relationship and not dependability. Because the moment it starts becoming a dependability, it becomes a clutch. And then it does not serve the purpose of independence in your thinking and basically preparing you to be able to conquer whatever it is that you're dealing with. Yeah.
Very true. And I don't think I can add anything further to what you said. The psychological safety, the need to have constructive challenges, can they go deeper? And most importantly, that clarity of intention. You really do not want to have lines. Everything there needs to be that focus. And yes, the fact that you've differentiated between the mentor and the coach, I hope those that are joining us can actually see the differentiation. And if I may use you and I, both of us are HR professionals. You have more experience than I do. So in this case, if we are having a conversation in the HR space, in that respect, you would be my mentor. But if I approach you I mean, in a coach perspective, the conversations are going to have a very different angle and perspective. Now, let us now jump into energy as a strategic resource, beyond time management. We talk a lot about time management, but not nearly as much about energy. How does energy influence performance and decision making at work?
You know, when I was hearing you ask that question, what came to mind is the value of time, right?
Yeah.
And time tells us when we work because we have specific timelines, we have targets that we need to be able to do what we need to do. But energy tells us how we work. So there is when and there is the how. The reality of how the world is evolving is the how is becoming more important. Now, I'm sure there are Gen Zs on this call, and they have taught us so well of how they are being managed. And it has helped us who are in a different demographic to really reposition how we do things differently. There's a time during COVID when there was a lot of remote working. And what it taught me during that period is presence does not equate productivity. And
True.
so highlighting what your expectations are, leaving you alone to be able to manage your time is important. But then what happens is then how do I check in to know whether you have the right kind of energies to be able to show up when you're supposed to show up? And so let's take a case of two professionals who have the same 8 hours in a day, yet are producing different results. Why? It depends on the quality of the energy they both bring. One is bringing high energy. And so what happens is because they're bringing high energy, the person tends to think more clearly, they can collaborate better, and they have better decisions in terms of their balance. Their decisions are balanced. Now, the other professional, same 8 hours, but then this person is coming in with low energy, fatigue. They're drained. 8 hours, their energy is depleted. So what is happening is some of the decisions they make, they're compromised because their mental space, they're not in the same wavelength as the other individual. And yet, both of these people are both high capable professionals. Both got their jobs on merit. But depending on the energy, this other person has low energy, they are more reactive, you know, and they will not proactively manage their space because they've lost a lot of time, because they are less creative, they are very exhausted. A lot of decisions are really starting to fall through the cracks. So energy is really, 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 really a strategic resource, really a strategic resource that we really need to guard. And we need to guard it because with the world and the way the world is evolving, we are expected to move fast. Of course, there's AI that is helping us to leverage and that kind of a thing. And so we can really optimize and use energy better. So one of the things that we need to be careful about is also to remember that organizations, as they want to become more sustainable, in terms of performance, they must start to pay attention to not only the workload and the time that is given to their resource, but also to the human capacity behind the work. And here I introduce a different conversation around the human capacity because that human capacity measures the strength the person is carrying along the way when they're carrying those demands, the ability to engage. When you look at their cognitive capacity, you look at the emotional capacity, the physical energy, and all that. All this encompassed together starts to deliberately position energy as a strategic resource. And the reality is, look at the statistics around mental health. 1 out of 4 individuals at the workplace are struggling with mental health issues. I know it's sounding like a cliche thing when I say this, and that's why people will use this like semantics and say, I'm having burnout. I'm depressed, I'm having anxiety. While that is semantics, we need to pay attention as human capital professionals when these words are used, because sometimes it's a cry for help, but sometimes if you do a root cause analysis, you realize that's why there is productivity issues. And so for me, energy is a very critical part of how we reposition and how we unlock the productivity at the workplace today.
I couldn't agree more. And I think a challenge also to organizations is when it matters to do with clarity,
Mm,
clarity. What's the measure of success? What does that look like? How do you measure it? Because when people are working in very vague environments, when people are working in environments whereby there is lack of support, then even with their best intentions to perform at their peak, they are very frustrated, and therefore a high energy individual, a high performing individual just withers down to low energy, and they have a hard time performing. Now, where do professionals tend to lose the most energy, even in roles they care deeply about?
mm. You know, the interesting thing about this conversation, I feel, and I'm strongly convinced, that energy loss doesn't always come from the work itself. It doesn't. It comes from how the work is structured or how it's experienced. And I say this with a lot of humility, especially to leaders as myself and other leaders. Then, how do we lead? So it's not really the work, but in terms of the delivery mode and how we are able to identify the best ways to unlock and actually get results from individuals. And when I say individuals, I'm talking about the talent within the organization. The way I manage you, Rosalind, will be very different at how I'd manage somebody else. If you are melancholy and somebody else is a sanguine, the other person is a flaky, I'm talking about the different temperaments, the ability to know and understand the different teammates that you're working with. And so one of the biggest common pitfalls today is I feel there's an area around how we operate at work. And when you look at how we switch between moving between meetings, emails, tasks, and how we just structure our days, there's a lot of time and energy lost in that space because we we don't take time to pause. There's one meeting, you keep hearing people saying, "Oh, I had back-to-back meetings." We have actually made it a very common thing and a very we've normalized that crazy space that I have back-to-back meetings. Well, how about taking structure, recalling that structure and looking at it from a different perspective? And the other thing that for me is actually quite alarming is because we don't have those recovery moments, we are really strained. And so it starts to affect our mental positioning. And today we even have apps that will tell you stand up, take a break, breathe. They even tell you how to when to drink water. That's where technology has taken us. So just thinking around that space of where professionals lose the most energy is how they structure their days. And another one is our ability to manage expectations. Again, let me speak to the overachievers on this call. Rome was not built in one day. And I'm speaking to myself as well. When we are doing those long hours, navigating through the workplace dynamics and really the pressure that we put upon ourselves because we are overachievers and going over and over and over and extending ourselves, stretching our capacity, that is what actually starts to drain us eventually. And it drains the energy because the reality is the system needs to be recovering and it needs to be refreshed every so often. Yeah.
Yeah, something you've just said, Rome wasn't built in a day. And I
Mhm.
think a lot of people also struggle with the fact that you are comparing your path with someone else's path. Yet you do
Mm,
not know, their backstory. You do not know how they came to where they are. And I think people need to appreciate that it's okay to pace yourself.
Yeah.
It's okay to embrace failure, learn from the failure, and then rise up again.
Mm,
But if you find yourself, having to lose yourself on account of comparing yourself with other people, not only will you be very frustrated, but you will drain the energy, the reason, the purpose as to why you are fighting for your dream. You will actually drain yourself as you go.
mhm,
So
mhm,
I think it's important for people to appreciate it's your path,
mm,
it's your room, you're the
mm,
reason, you
mhm.
know why you're building the room that you're building. So
Yeah,
allow others to have other cities, build your own.
absolutely.
Yeah.
I like that.
What are some of the early signs that someone is operating on borrowed energy?
You know, it creeps in very quietly. It's very subtle. You cannot really tell when you're operating on borrowed energy. Unless you sense check as an individual. Some early signs are fatigue, consistent fatigue. And when you're having that consistent fatigue, it shows up different. You have had your 8 hours of sleep. You've had your rest over the weekend. I don't know that you've had people now saying, oh, the weekend is so Chinese. It was so short, like it played. We say it like a joke, right?
Yeah.
But the reality is, those are some of the early signs of the energy being depleted and the early signs that we are really living on borrowed energy. The other thing is irritability, right? Your patient's barometer is really tried and tested, and you are not as patient as you were before because you just want this thing over and done with, right?
Yeah.
And you start to having it starts now translating into even difficulties concentrating in a meeting and starting to make decisions that are not as sound as you'd make them before because you are not in that mental space of having clarity and your horizon is blurred with so many other nuances that you could actually control if you had taken time to refresh. And the reality is when we are pushing people to go on leave, it sounds like, oh, HR is just managing finance, the liability, the provisions. No, we want you to take time. It's even in our employment law that you have to take 14 days of uninterrupted break. There's a reason for that, so that you can be able to take time out. When you're feeling you are so busy, you are in those back to back meetings, but you're not feeling like you're effective. You're looking at your to do list, you're not ticking it, but yet you're very busy. You're always in meetings. Those are some of the early signs. Now, the challenge is a lot of people who are overachievers and who are high performers, they're often good at pushing those signals away and just kind of putting them in the back burner because you are so focused on what you're doing, on your work and what you're trying to get done, that that strain starts to become invisible. You are actually overriding it. You keep overriding it until burnout checks in.
True.
Mhm,
And you've said something very important, overriding the signs
mhm.
until burnout checks in, and then you lose the most vital thing for yourself, which is
Yeah.
health.
Mm,
Good performance, high energy, all of those are, you know, they go hand in hand with good health.
mm,
Yeah. But where you abandon yourself trying to meet all these targets, and yes, I appreciate there's pressure at work, but if you do not take care of yourself, I recently read an article that burnout can actually take up to 3 years to clear because you
mm.
have been shot, you have been overriding all those warning signs that when your body shuts down, it doesn't matter how many hours of sleep you
Yeah.
take at one
Yeah.
go or go on holiday, you feel you still need more. So, can we take a back step and take care of yourselves the same way we are looking forward to those targets. It's the least we
Yeah.
can do is to take care of ourselves. Now, as we close out on the energy piece, what are some small, meaningful ways professionals can begin managing their energy more intentionally?
Mm. You know, when you were speaking just now before you asked that question, it took me back to my days in agency. I did almost 5 years in an agency, in a marketing and communication agency. And I must say, that was the time in my life that I actually believed burnout is a thing. I used to think these are just these cliche words that people use.
Yeah.
I went through burnout. My body was constantly on a high. I didn't realize it until I transitioned into a different workspace. I was so used to that level of anxious space, and I realized I had to be very, very deliberate. And you're absolutely right. The article you read, you're absolutely right. It takes time. In the beginning, I was like that until I realized the space that I'm in is different. And it actually helped me to start reflecting. And so I'm going to use that perspective to respond to that question when you talk about some of the meaningful ways that a professional can do to be more deliberate and more intentional, right? Because energy doesn't always, when you're trying to manage your energy, it doesn't always come from nowhere. You have to be very deliberate and you have to make specific lifestyle changes. And small changes consistently, you start to see the results. And one quick one that I can just mention is I started using focus windows. What do I mean by focus windows? Focus windows is where I book time on my calendar, like every Monday morning, between 8 and 11, you cannot book a meeting. I booked all my lunch hours, whether I'm taking lunch or not. It's my time to refresh. On Wednesdays, I have focus hours. And unfortunately, I work in a space right now where on Fridays it's a no meeting day. You'll be, if there's anybody from my office watching this, it's the first organization that I've worked in that this has worked,
Yeah.
that we don't have any meetings on Fridays. So it also helps me to be able to refresh. Now, those focus windows are very critical because what they do is they help me, because I do this for me. I've done this deliberately on Monday morning because I used to work before, even on the weekends all the time. I would find myself working on a Sunday to prepare for my week, but I don't need to do that anymore. If I want to, I can, but I don't have to. So on Monday morning, it allows me to catch up and ask myself, what am I planning to do over the week? And then, of course, on Fridays, I'll of course take time to close out on that. So it also gives me space to preserve my cognitive energy, to be able to reflect, to be able to to challenge myself and have certain strategic conversations, that critical thinking space. But also, you must have short breaks in between tasks. Step away from the laptop, take a walk. The other day, someone was telling me, oh, they've replaced their work home desk to one of those, hydraulic ones that you
Yes.
can stand and
Yeah.
continue working when you're standing. That is amazing. So it helps you to actually just kind of the physical reset of your mind. It actually helps you with that. Then the other thing that I realized that one can do, we have different energy times, and there are certain people who say they're morning individuals. There are those who are more at their best in the evenings. So schedule complex tasks during those high energy periods. So you align your tasks with your energy rhythms, because the reality is we're not all the same. There are those early morning people and there are the night owls. And so if you feel that is where you will spend time to do the best at your peak time, because then you will actually, if you're not deliberate about it, what happens is when you are trying to resolve a complex task that you're dealing with, it will take you 4 hours because you're working at it when you're not at your peak. But yet, if you dealt with it during your peak, you'll take an hour. And so you manage your energy better. Now, the last thing I'm just going to mention is take time to pause and review what you're doing. Reprioritize, deprioritize when you must, because sometimes you plan your week and there are other priorities that come in. Just be comfortable to deprioritize. Have open conversations with your leader, with your manager, and say, I'm deprioritizing this because I'm picking this. It doesn't mean you have to do everything, but you have to learn to challenge and you have to learn to say no. Keyword, you have to learn to say no. A friend of mine keeps saying no is a complete sentence. Well, I'm not bold enough to do that. Usually for me, it's not a complete sentence. But yeah, you have to learn to push back, but push back with reason, right? Because prioritizing is actually a skill, because not everything that is important is urgent. So if you learn how to use that matrix, then you're able to structure your day better. You're able to optimize on your energy levels and you're able to really work more sustainably with greater clarity. Yeah.
I'll borrow this. Just because it's important doesn't mean that it's urgent.
Mhm.
I think I need to print that and fix it on my desk going forward. Now, let's go to the final bit: personal investment and sustainable growth.
Mm,
Seeing yourself as a long-term asset.
mm.
Why does investing in ourselves sometimes feel optional while pushing through exhaustion feels responsible? Guilty. Guilty as charged.
I was one of those people for the longest time
Yeah.
until I recognize I need to practice what I preach. And so these days, I am a firm believer. I preach growth mindset day in, day night. Now, let me give you a small trick. When I'm interviewing candidates, there's one question I always ask: where do you see yourself in the next 3 years or 5 years?
Yeah.
If somebody tells me they see themselves in that job, the same job that I'm interviewing them for, then I know this person doesn't have a growth mindset. You know why? We want you to come and take the job, but I'm not just interviewing you for today. I'm equally interviewing you for tomorrow.
Yeah.
So I would like to know, will you be part of my talent pool as we future proof the organization? And so the reality of the matter is a lot of times it's a very common paradox, right? A lot of professionals normally equate persistence under pressure with responsibility. While that is not the case, because self investments really feels like it's something that is secondary. It's not something I have to do today because I'm already doing what I need to do. But you see, we have to keep on refreshing, we have to keep on growing. The reality is, you will become, I was going to use a very strong word, so I will take a step back. The reality is, we have to keep on evolving, we have to keep on growing. And so, culturally, what happens is what is rewarded is what is visible in terms of results, in terms of deadlines. But when you are investing in oneself, you don't feel like it's being rewarded. But when you are investing in yourself, what is happening is you're preparing not only for your role, but you're preparing for your next step. And so that work that you need to be able to do on yourself is to be able to conserve the energy so that you can invest in your own growth. You see, I keep saying this: you cannot give what you don't have. You cannot give what you don't have. And so when change happens, when transformations are happening, and I've done many transformations in my career, I've been part of several transformations. One of the things that I know, the survivors are the people who have high potential. The
Yeah.
people who are able to reposition themselves, the people who are agile, who are able to adapt and are able to move fast enough to be able to catch on with the wave. And those are the people who really survive. And so the reality is, the mindset today is, I'm working for my job today, needs to shift to, I need to be effective in what I'm doing today, manage my time and my energy wisely so that I actually have also the capacity to be able to invest in myself. Otherwise, you start to plateau. And when you plateau, you have other people who are coming into the organization, and the question is, why are they getting the role? And yet I've been here long enough. And so we need to be able to reposition that and remember, if you do not keep growing as an individual, it's like having a car that you do not maintain or having a machine that is not well oiled. What happens? At some point, it breaks down. And maintenance, self maintenance is very critical. Yeah.
Couldn't agree more. And the fact that investing in yourself is you future proving or proofing yourself.
Absolutely.
Because failure to do that, then you will go down a rabbit hole as a
Mm.
result of actions you never took.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, how can professionals reframe self investment as strategic choice rather than a luxury? We show up for others, but we do not show up for ourselves. So, how can we see it as a strategic investment and not a luxury?
I think the best approach is to link that personal investment, that self investment to what's in it for you, to your career trajectory, right?
Yeah.
So if you have a clear line of sight of where you aspire to be at some point, and it's important to think long term, think medium term, and then start working towards it very deliberately. You see, when you do that, you are able to be very, very tactful and very deliberate. And so sometimes people normally, we imagine that investing in myself in terms of development has got to be some workshop I go to, some classroom I sit in. It could even be on the job where you get stretched to take on more responsibilities than your current assignment. And actually, you know what? It has 70% more impact if you follow the 70-20-10 model. It's
Yeah.
70% more impactful when you learn on the job. And so you stretch your mind, you stretch yourself to be able to do more. And so when you start viewing, learning, and even coaching, you start viewing the different training opportunities as you have to view it as a tool to enhance your capability, to basically project and actually accelerate your career path. Now, then it stops to become a luxury. Then it becomes a strategic enabler. You are very deliberate about what you're doing. You're actually preparing for the next job when you're in your current. And so when promotion opportunities come up, you're already now because you are very deliberate. And so some of the things that you can actually think about even as you're doing this is to look at the development and ask yourself what would be the return on investment if, let's say, I spent money on this program or I spent extra hours and stretched to be able to do this. How does it benefit me today and benefit me tomorrow? So when you start looking at things that way, then you start to realize that it is truly a very tactful and strategic enabler for you. Yeah.
As you were speaking, something came to mind. The storyline that goes, if you're 36 years old and
Mhm.
you want to do a 4 year degree program,
Yeah.
this the one who will say, why am I going for a degree program at 36?
Uh-huh.
But there's the other angle that says, do the degree or not, 4 years from now, you will be 40. So you can be a 40-year-old with a degree or a 40-year-old without a degree.
Without
So
a degree. Yeah.
exactly. So if you're clear on what your North Star is, all these other peripheral things become non-issues because you really have a clear sight of what it is that you want to do.
Mhm.
What types of personal investments tend to have the most lasting impact over time?
Mm.
I
Just
think saying no is one of them.
yeah. Saying no is one of them because you're creating more time. You create more time for yourself and to be able, actually, you're conserving your energy. That's absolutely perfect. Now, as you're doing that, I would actually encourage each and every individual to at least have a mentor. It doesn't have to be one, it could even be two. You can be mentored along different paths, right? So having that soundboard, having that individual, that professional who can help you to sense check is very important because they help you to refine your judgment, to actually, when you're struggling on a certain decision, it's actually faster for you because this person has been along that path, right? And
Yeah.
so they help you to open up your mind to possibilities that you weren't aware. And a mentor is one, you can also look at a coach. And what a coach does for you, a coach helps you to actually realize you actually have all the answers within the intrinsic motivation of knowing that it's within me. I have it. I've got this. But the way the person asks those questions, it can't empower you any other way. I can't see it empowering any other way. I mean, it's amazing. It's a phenomenal space. So it's a great investment space to be in. The other thing I would like to really encourage us is to really invest in our mental well being. Let's protect our minds. Let's protect our minds. There's a lot happening, especially in this day and age of AI, all these social media pages. It's moving too fast. There's a lot of information for us to consume. It's a lot out there. We need to protect our mental well-being. So one of the things that I do personally, I don't look at WhatsApp during the day. And the reality, the reason why I don't look at WhatsApp during this, not because I have self-control or I'm disciplined. It's just because there are too many jokes. And I tell you, 254 Kenyans, we got jokes for everything. And because I love to laugh, when I go into WhatsApp to check something, I'll see a joke, I start laughing, I get distracted, and I forget what I was trying to do. So on principle, I only look at my WhatsApp in the evening. So if you're really, really looking for me and there's something on WhatsApp, you'll call me, then I'll check my WhatsApp. So it's a way of basically just managing, and it's a personal investment on how I manage my energy, how I manage my time. Now, one great investment that I learned the other day, as I told you, I'm on a journey, I'm on a path as well, is I learned the power of mindfulness, right? And I'll just share a small tip on what I'm currently doing in terms of managing my rest and managing I've built a personal resilience plan, which actually has given me very interesting opportunities on how to manage my energy. And so I had to do some start, stop, continue activities on my personal resilience plan, which anyone can actually do for themselves and say, what is it I want to start doing that will be different to be able to help me to just be grounded? What is it I need to stop doing? And what is it I need to continue doing? So the continue doing is now the thing I'm telling you, like about the WhatsApp. But the most powerful one that I have just recently, it's something I started this year when people were setting goals, annual goals. I decided to set my resilience plan because I just turned 50 and there's a thing around being on fifth floor, right? And so I realized, oh my God, I'm getting closer to retirement. So I need to be very deliberate. So the breathing exercises have really, really helped me to just keep me grounded, managing stress levels, and it actually has given me clarity. So those are some of the investments that I've done for myself that I feel are very useful. Now, the last one that I'm yet to engage in, and maybe I will advise people to also just leverage on it. Let's leverage on AI. AI is here to make our lives better, to make us more efficient and to make us more faster. So let's not fight it. Let's leverage AI. The digital space is here for us, and we do not want to become the dinosaurs to remain extinct, but we need to move with the wave, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Your personal resilience plan is now it's something that I'll take up as a challenge because oftentimes the same way for you don't view WhatsApp during the day. It's the same thing I figured, same thing with social media.
Yeah.
The moment you get onto it, it can be very addictive that it will be reel after reel, page after page, and then the next thing you know, you have lost a track of time that you could have
Yeah.
actually done something constructive. It doesn't mean that it's bad to get onto social media to see. Maybe that's you distressing. But if that is your go-to 24/7, then something is really, really, really off. But yes,
Yeah.
protect your mental well-being, the power of mindfulness, leveraging AI. And yes,
Yeah.
we can all come up with our own, personal resilience plan and see how things come.
Yeah.
Now, to the final question as we come to the close of this wonderful discussion. Looking ahead, what kind of investment in oneself do people most often wish they had started earlier? I think one of them is boundaries. You know, when people overstep and then over time you find yourself drained, then building those boundaries, you see you are
Yeah.
preserving your space, your energy, your peace.
Yeah.
What other investments in oneself can or do people wish they had started earlier?
Yeah, let me just build on the boundary conversation because as a person, and it's interesting you chose this question to ask me. So if there are people who know me on this call, they're wondering, Ayoti has really come a long way. I must tell you, I was one person I used to ignore rest. Like I didn't know what rest was. If I'm in a restaurant, I'm waiting for a friend to come, I have my laptop open. So I used to claim that was my way of managing my impatient self of looking at my watch to check if the person is late.
Yeah.
So rest is a very sacred thing. And so as you talk about boundaries, the boundaries will help us to be able to deliberately create those spaces to conserve our energy and to be able to optimize that space to do things that are important, equally important, and also urgent. And so we need to have time to recover. So if I was to look at my younger self, that's one thing I would tell myself. Do not start habits that are unsustainable because it looks sustainable, but it's not really sustainable. The other thing that I would say an investment to myself is, and even to other people, is this thing I talked about AI and leveraging AI and understanding how it can enable you to be more efficient and you can be able to work smarter, not to relegate of and actually not apply your brains because sir, there's also the risk of not thinking and just asking ChatGPT, Perplexity, and all these Gemini things to do stuff for you.
Yeah.
But there are ways you can be able to manage. Like one of the most fantastic ways I have learned how to manage with the AI is just having recaps for meetings and my next steps and everything. I don't have to look for minutes and things like that. It fantastically summarizes for you a meeting, right? So let's leverage AI. Now, the last one I'm just going to talk about, and because this is very critical, and I'm actually I was saving it for last, specifically is because of the power it holds. And for me, it's how we leverage on our relationships. We need to invest in our relationships, and they have to be symbiotic. Symbiotic in the sense that if you're looking for a mentor, who are you equally mentoring as well? So we must have symbiotic kind of conversations and say, I'll give, I should also be able to be receiving from somebody else. And so we underestimate the value of trusted advisors and networks, the power of our social net worth. We do not appreciate how important those that social capital is. Yes, it is one of the most powerful pieces, I must say. I keep saying I value social capital more than financial capital. It will sound like a cliche, and I'm hoping I'm starting a conversation here so that the viewers can say something, then we can make another session and talk about it. But social capital for me is very meaningful, and it has grown me as an individual. The financial capital becomes a byproduct of that social capital. So I'll close with that. Yeah.
The part of social capital, it remind me of something we say in Swahili. Mtu ni watu. You
Mm.
know, man is not an island. And
Yes.
when you invest in formidable, rich relationships, they can only take you higher. But if you find yourself, you are in a space where you have become the plug, everyone, you're the charging port, and everyone is draining off of you, that's a toxic environment that you need to walk away from. Regardless of how long you've known that individual for, if it is not building you, then it should not form part and parcel of any pillar that you want to build on.
Yeah.
I cannot believe that the hour is over.
Oh,
I cannot believe that the hour is
wow.
over, but I cannot thank you enough, Ayoti, for taking us through the topic of the day. You are the asset, personal investment that pays off. And this is a very wide topic,
Yeah.
very wide. But I hope the three themes that we have, taken up today,
Yeah.
the ones as you join us online on LinkedIn or on YouTube, you have actually walked away with, you know, insights that you can apply in your life. Do you have any parting shots before we close out?
Wow, what would I say? So the first thing I would say is you really, really need to see yourself clearly as an individual. So, and how best would you do that? Look in the mirror, because you're not going to kid yourself when you look in the mirror, you'll see exactly who you are. And so when you do that, then you need to find that energy to fuel yourself wisely. Find it. And how will you find that energy? Try and do an audit of your time. We each have 24 hours in a day. What do we do with it? Right? And then start investing in yourself relentlessly, constantly. Do not wait for this big thing to come and then you go and you're rushing to do it. So, consistent, small actions consistently have a lot of impact because the reality is you are the asset that makes everything around you possible. You drive yourself. So, go for it, invest in yourself by creating that space where you have managed your energy wisely. And thank you for this session, Roslyn. Thank you for giving me an opportunity to share the little that I know and to share my experience as well. I appreciate you.
I appreciate your time. I appreciate your insights. I think I speak from, everyone else that is joining us. For those that have sent through the comments, Duncan Mwangi, Linda Amuhaya, thank you so much for joining us, be it on LinkedIn or YouTube. I will see you on the next session of Unplugged with Ross. To everyone, have yourselves a lovely evening, and depending on where you're joining us in the world, have yourself a lovely time. See you next time. Thanks and goodbye.